Hello, friends. Robert Bevan here, author of the Caverns and Creatures series of comedy, fantasy novels, and short stories. With me is Sam West, and today we are talking about the spell Lesser Restoration.
I can see I'm no longer blind or deafened or paralyzed or poisoned. I just read the spell
So,
description. That's all it
what
does.
what is what does this spell do? Say,
You touch a creature, you can end one disease or one condition afflicting it. The condition can be blinded, deafened, paralyzed, or poisoned. So it ends a disease or it ends one of those four conditions. Second level spell slot: bards, clerics, druids, paladins, rangers, artificers, life domain, oath of devotion, and celestial warlocks, alongside divine sorcerer, which isn't normally like on the little things, but they get access to the whole cleric spell list. So everyone under the sun gets lesser restoration. Does everyone under the sun need lesser restoration? I am here to be the prophet to tell you nay. This is an overtaken spell. It is overrated. You will cast it fewer times than it is worth preparing. I do not think this is a necessary course of action for almost every table to take.
I didn't realize it was that popular. I
I
was
tend
gonna
to
say
go for it.
I was gonna say it didn't seem worth taking, and I thought you would correct me, but looks like we might be on the same page with this one.
Yeah, so a lot of clerics, a lot of druids, this is often kind of and I think those two classes in particular, it is the least offensive on, because it's really easy just you prepare a list. Most of them, you know what you want to be casting, and then you got like two or three extra prepared spells to get, and you're like, well, I'll just take the good hygiene spells. So I'll get detect magic and lesser restoration, I guess, something like that. And this is often lumped into the good hygiene spells, which is like, yeah, if it comes up, removing a paralysis is really important. And to its credit, removing a paralysis is a really big deal. So for those specific cases, for cleric and druid, it's fine. It's probably happening once in every 10 sessions. Maybe that's not the end of the world, but if you're not casting all of those prepared spells anyway, this seems like a reasonable course of action. Every other option in the game, this is not getting cast enough to justify taking it. This is not going to be an effect that you're going to regularly find to be all that useful, because the four conditions just don't come up all that much. Poison comes up the most. Blind comes up a fair bit too, but like not to such a degree that you should expect it every encounter or every other encounter, or frankly every like 5 encounters. I wouldn't expect, maybe around every 5 is where I would start to see poisoned or blinded, somewhere in that range to start being like applicable. That's based off of encounters that I remember that I've run. Thinking back right now in the space, that's where I put about my creatures that do poison conditions or blind conditions, right? Or paralysis is even less than that, because it's a miserably unfun mechanic to play into, right? Being held as a player feels awful while all of the enemies crit you, and you're just like, well, I skipped my turn. Great, that was fun. Failed another wisdom saving throw. This is the greatest night of my life, right? It's really miserable. So for all those reasons, you don't tend to see lesser restoration being all that impactful. It just doesn't have that opportunity to be cast.
My my take on it was a little bit different.
Okay.
Even if you do need, even if these conditions come up, it's the whole cure wounds thing again. Am I going to spend an action to remedy this problem, or am I going to spend that action to attack the creature that is causing these problems? Because a lot of these conditions, after the fight's over, they'll go away anyway.
Most of the time
Uh,
during the fight they'll go away, right?
yeah,
Like if this is on a paladin who's got like a +7 to their save, you're like, they'll probably just save out at the end of turn, and that'll be fine. I'd rather take my turn here, right?
yeah, and some of the conditions, I mean, aren't even that bad. Like, I
Deafen is
mean,
normally upside.
yeah, that's true. But I was thinking poisoned. What is that? You give you disadvantage on attacks or
Yeah.
something, and yeah, you can live with that for a couple rounds.
You definitely don't want
That,
to, like, especially in the low tiers, commit a second level spell slot, having to touch the creature and your action to remove that. That's definitely not worth it. You're right there for sure.
and then blinded, like that's not gonna. I mean, if it's just straight up boom, you're blind, like with a blindness spell, okay. But if you're in a magical darkness,
That doesn't solve your problem
healing your
though.
blindness isn't going to do anything. And that's, I think, most of the times you're suffering the blinded condition is going to be due to some other effect like that.
Yeah, I think you're absolutely right about that. Yeah, those are all excellent points.
Yeah.
The other thing this does is cure diseases, and the diseases in 5e are already quite bad. And the incentive to make more interesting diseases is not there because this spell exists, which I then would say this spell has a net negative impact on the game for existing. So that's great.
Catch 22.
Yeah. Why
Yeah.
make interesting poisons and diseases if at third level you have a universal solution to all of them?
Well, all right. The counter argument. That's worth developing better diseases to justify, people taking the spell.
The whole premise of a disease is something that eats at you for a couple sessions, right? It's something that you undergo, that you suffer through, that you learn to adjust and adapt and deal with, right? A lot of the premises of diseases, well, they're different, do different things than just bog standard conditions, right? They have to justify existing by being more than you disadvantage on your abilities checks. They have to be justify existing by they do more than a disadvantage on attack rolls, or at least different things to those, right? This being a universal catch-all to those means if they're ever long-term debilitating, this is something you just prepare at a long rest and it's gone. And that's no longer all that interesting of a problem. It afflicts you up until you take that long rest, sure. But like for the most part, it's not an actual long-term effect that your character has to undergo or deal with or look for solutions for. There's no more quests to find holy items to cure a zombie curse. You just fix it. You just disease away and move on with your life, right? And I don't find that to be a particularly engaging or exciting experience. I think there can be a lot like zombieism as an own concept, right? Zombieism as a disease that we see in like The Walking Dead, that we see in a lot of pop culture zombie stuff, could be a really interesting gimmick in a D&D campaign, right? Where any damage taken by a zombie becomes a lot more interesting and threatening. And you may not even necessarily know who actually has it and contracted it by DM making secret saves and stuff like that. Lesser Restoration can just be like, oh, okay, everyone come in the circle. We're spending 8 hours. I'm just going to do a good old-fashioned hygiene check and lesser rest to all of you just in case. And that no longer can be a problem that exists, which is kind of, I don't know, limiting in the scope of what I would like a disease to be. I think there could be a lot of really interesting room to expand this out that Lesser Restoration really hamstrings and pulls in. And that's where I'm like, that's dumb. We should rework this in some way, shape, or form to be a little bit more interesting. Maybe add levels to diseases so this cures anything of its level or lower cast. That could be interesting. I remember
stages.
Stages sounds great, right? This cures a stage X or under could be a neat way to do it. Fourth edition,
makes it a stage lower or something.
Fourth edition attached levels to basically everything, from my understanding, where it's like this is an X level feature or whatever, X level monster, X level items, those kinds of things. While that is very gamified, I do think there is a lot of benefit there as far as making counterbalances and solutions to problems whenever they can be X level or less, or things within 3 of this level or whatever. I think fifth edition would benefit a lot from that kind of design space. And Lesser Restoration is not in that design space. It's just if the spell magic just worked on every single magical spell, regardless of spell level, with no saves attached. And that's kind of dumb. I wouldn't want that to exist because I think powerful magic should be harder to break. And dispel magic's an important shutoff valve, but at least like it does have to work a lot to shut off more powerful spell effects.
Well, I think that you might have just had the solution right there. I mean, if Restoration worked the same way as dispel magic, then diseases from higher level beings or creatures are harder to do. You have to upcast your Lesser Restoration
for higher CR, that maybe like imposed by higher CR creatures or something like
that.
There could be better ways to do this, I think. Where it is now, it's really simple. I think, again, man, you've even talked me down from like, maybe you prepare this on clerics and druids. You're right, you don't. You have to touch the thing, which means if it's being like in a cloud of poison, you're actively endangering yourself to do that. And that's to remove a condition that you probably they can suffer through and deal with it over you wasting resources and actions to solve that problem. Paralysis is definitely one where, like, if you know you're going into a paralysis fight, you prepare this for that fight, because paralysis is so debilitating, you are happy to spend an action to make it go away. Mm-hmm. In that instance, I think is probably where it's good to know that this exists. In the instance of you get a disease, you prefer it over a long rest, good to know this exists. Beyond that, on your bards, on your paladins, on your rangers, on any character that has to spend a known thing, a resource to get this, don't. Way better options out there. This is not going to be worth it almost ever for those characters.
I 100% agree. I don't know. We got anything else to say about Lesser Restoration?
It's not uncastable. It's still a 2, right? It still does something, and that something can be meaningful. Its existence matters, and for that reason, it can't ever be less than a 2, right? Like there will be times where you'll get
for hold person alone, that's that gets it off the 1 territory.
Yeah, this is something that goes, oh god, he's gonna auto die, cure it, right?
Yeah,
you have to know about that ahead of time, which does make this not able to be a 3 or anything to that effect. But like, still,
I mean, you don't have to know it ahead of time. You can have it ready.
You shouldn't.
Yeah, you shouldn't. But yeah, that's about all I got to say about it. So I guess we're agreed on 2 out of 5.
Yeah, I think the moral of the story is if you want to play a healer character, It's kind of a trap in this game, unfortunately. The healing options aren't really that great. I would reframe it as playing a supportive character and taking more buff effects, taking healing word and maybe like haste and bless and those kinds of stuff. Maybe like take a good berry if you're in druid or ranger, and then the rest of your stuff can be supportive and help kill things. But the curing and disease solving and magic healing stuff all in this game is kind of bad. And this is a prime example of that I would steer away from.
Right. Well, that was Lesser Restoration. Thank you, Sam. Thank you, everyone, for joining us. Let us know what you think in the comments. I expect we're going to have some disagreements.
Maybe not. Maybe I just way overrated things. Who knows? But tell us in the comments, like he said.
Yeah, I'm excited to read them. All right, that's that, and we'll see you next time. Bye-bye.
Thank you for watching. If you found this helpful, informative, or entertaining, I'd really appreciate it if you hit the like button below. You needn't smash it, a gentle tap will suffice. If you want to see more videos like this, subscribe to the channel. And make sure you check out the links in the description, where you'll find my Caverns Creatures series of comedy fantasy novels, Sam's full review of the spell, and other fun things.